I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Kylie, roll call, please.
Lehman.
Here.
Gilman.
Yes.
Chasm.
Here.
Horn. Yes. Underwood.
Here. Approval of the agenda.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to amend the agenda. I see that there are some people in the public here, so rather than keep them waiting here, I'd like to move our closed session to D and move B, C, and D as A, B, and C.
And also, if I could add to that, the discussion of the bridge, you said you're going to add that.
Yeah, we can.
Okay, I mean, if you don't want,
That's fine.
I'll
We can
talk
add
about.
discussion.
Okay,
We'll put that in after the audit update.
okay.
So A becomes,
So I would support his with the friendly amendment to add the bridge discussion.
So are we putting the bridge discussion about
After
the
audit.
closed- After audit,
Okay. But before the close,
before the closed session, okay.
or excuse me, after finance, I apologize.
Oh, after finance, okay, that's fine.
I'll do that finance, but before
Item
E.
That's fine.
Any other? Those in favor?
Aye.
All right. Is there a conflict of interest on anything? Anybody knows of? Believes so? Do you have any public comment? Gotta read the rule, Rob. Gotta read the rule.
He probably knows. Any person may make an advance appointment with the board regarding road commission topics for a regular or special meeting in accordance with the Open Meetings Act. If an appointment is made, the topic will be an agenda item. The following applies to public comments. Please state his or her name and address. Topic must be relevant to the road commission. Individuals are allowed to speak once for up to 3 minutes on a single topic, which may be extended by the chair. A group addressing the board requires a designated spokesperson who may speak up to 10 minutes. The board will not act on any item from the public that is not on the agenda.
Only one topic, is that what it was?
It must be related to the road commission.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
No recipes.
Rob Henschel, Grand Traverse County Commission Chair and obviously resident of Grand Traverse County. And I just want to say a couple points. Number one, you're kind of the unsung heroes a lot of times. And I really appreciate the collaboration that happened to make the roadkill pickup start up again. I want to officially thank you and the administration for collaboration with county administration and trying to find some channels to communicate with the state of Michigan and find a way to do that without putting your workers, the road workers, in harm's way legally. So thank you for all of that and for taking care of our roads and our residents as far as the roadkill issue. The only other thing would be like the bridge thing coming up that you added. We might have to get creative, and I just want to say, open-ended collaboration, anything we can do to help make that east-west crossing happen sooner and more efficiently. By all means, the County Board of Commissioners is, as far as I'm concerned, which I can't speak for all of them, but I'm the chairman, so usually, Mr. Chairman, usually you can get some support. We'll do what we can to promote that happening sooner. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you to the county for your collaboration with us on the road.
My pleasure.
I really believe that
That made it
folks,
happen.
we couldn't make it happen. We were at a dead end in our world. We're gonna go right into item B, which is the railroad project. This is a project that I've been working on with Brad. We want to bring the board up to speed so nobody gets blindsided. We are looking at a parcel of property that backs up to ours to be able to bring in trains so that we can bring in products up to and including biodiesel so that we can lower our emissions of the trucks in the future. And I'm going to let Brad talk a little bit more because you're doing more of the back and forth.
So I've been talking to a couple of salt companies and trying to get to exact prices, and we really need to have a more defined scale of delivery for it. But I have also talked to the rail engineer
who works with Great Lakes Central on a regular basis to see what it would take to have a rail spur built. And right now, with some of the grants that come from the Fed, plus the fact that it's coming off of an MDOT rail, and the fact that Great Lakes Central is trying to build more of a business model up here, they were expressing, you know, some good interest in helping us out. And it would be something that we would probably end up owing very little on the actual design and build of the spur, as well as what needs to happen up here. The biggest thing for us would be for the delivery of salt, because right now we're paying a lot of money to have salt shipped here. The rail is pretty comfortable with the fact that they believe they could get it here cheaper for us in the long run. And they could bring it, you know, 10 cars a week, or they could bring it 25, 50 cars. But we would go through about 200 cars a year between us and Antrim County, who's expressed some interest, Kalkaska County, who's expressed some interest, and Leelanau County. So that's the kind of the ideas. It would come in back behind us off of Keystone. The engineer has looked at the grades from the county's GIS and is comfortable that the train could very easily push it up into our yard. The only problem we have is we would have to build a containment building for dumping it because of the salt dust. If we're bringing in gravel, it's not a problem. We don't need that. But to bring in salt, because of the fact that it's considered, you know, detrimental to the environment, you do have to contain that dust. But we're looking at it and we feel like we could probably save 100% of the cost of what we would have to put into the line, probably within 4 years, if not less. So that would be something that, you know, in the long run, then afterwards, it's just a much easier way for us to deal with things. And we're not bringing in, you know, twice as many trucks, because a truck can hold about 50 tons. Each rail car holds about 100 tons. So it's something we're looking at. Biodiesel, we've talked to people that are turning soybeans into biodiesel, and we've had Dan's talk to the manufacturers, and, you know, as they move forward with these vehicles, all of them are going to be basically full biodiesel compatible. And at that point, then it might become even more beneficial for us to start thinking about, excuse me, about moving our small truck fleet into diesel, because the cost then could be comparable to gasoline, and it's a better product, or it's a better truck in the long run for a lot of what we do. So we're trying to look at that. And then, you know, there are other options even down in the Kingsley area that we've started to pursue potentially, you know, because we're right off another line there. What would it cost us to do something there? But if in the short term, we're focusing mainly on this facility, because we do go through about 10,000 tons of salt every year. So that's a lot of salt coming in on trucks.
So I just wanted everybody to know that we are working on that. Eventually, we are going to have to hire an engineer, you know, because we have to see what it would look like. So there would be some cost to the board in the beginning to make sure it'll work. And I think we bring in biodiesel, we can bring in standard fuel diesel too. I mean, we can bring in stuff by the tanker.
It expands our vendor base.
Yes.
Yes.
Which I think is good.
Even slag, I think they can get it.
Yeah. And that's one of the other things too, because I did talk to a couple of different suppliers. The problem we have right now for chip seal is always getting stone here. But that works for the chip seal. There's a lot of it further south. So we could be trucking or train reloading up chip seal stone, so that we don't have that problem with getting stone here for us.
It's part of that aggressive forward thinking.
No, it's actually an appropriate use of the rail.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, passengers, it's a waste of time, but I mean, as far as our particular use in cargo and goods, and if it helps to strengthen the rail's presence up here, I think it's a great idea.
And there's also potential, you know, for us to actually have it run by somebody else and have it be a commercial type outfit too at some point. depending on how that would work out. We don't know. We haven't got that far yet, but there's, you know, there are other people that would like rail up here that are too far from the main line to use it.
So the spur would belong to the railroad company now.
The spur would belong to the railroad while it's in the railroad right of way. Once it leaves the railroad right of way, it becomes ours, but they would build it.
Okay, they will build it, but we'll be responsible for its maintenance costs and all that.
Yeah, but for what we're looking at, I mean, when we're saving $200,000 potentially a year on salt delivery, that adds up pretty quick. And that's the type of thing, he said, you know, these aren't, because they're spurs and they don't need to be going 55 miles an hour. You know, it's not like you have to have them to this incredibly smooth thing. The rails, the engines are strong enough to push them up the hill and get them into place for us.
So right now, you're just in the basic
It's just
conceptual-
getting started. Yeah, we started talking to these people to make sure what our best bet is and make sure that this is a beneficial thing to us. So it's mainly been me making phone calls to try and figure out where we want to go. And when we start looking to need money, then we'll be back before the board once we have some better ideas from the engineers and the railroad company as far as final prices for delivery.
And it does include the soybean folks down in Ithaca. I mean, Summerfield, we talked, they're making biodiesel there. California is sucking a lot of it up right now. But, I just wanted the board to know that we are doing this and that
They'd love that
eventually,
ship close by.
the board will have to make a decision if they want to move forward with it once we get that close. So, and hopefully it'll just be the next few months, I'm hoping.
Yeah, he's supposed to be up. He's supposed to be up with another engineer, the actual physical engineer. He's supposed to be
A
up.
rough cost of what we'd have to put out to start it. And then we would apply for the grants, or they apply for the grants. I've talked to MDOT Rail myself. They're more than supportive to have us do this. So
They are. Does anybody use this line on this side of the river in Grand Traverse County? I know the other side has one recipient, Britain or somewhere near Britain, there's one company that gets deliveries by rail on the west side of
they
the
go to
river.
Lewisburg, that.
But this particular east
Yeah.
side of the river line is.
It goes out to the, it takes lumber out to the lumber yard out somewhere in that area. And then it comes back and picks up recycled material from somebody, recycled steel and other products.
Everything travels through there. It's the only line in the town. So even the one on the other side by Britain.
It goes on
has
this
to
one,
come
okay.
through here,
great.
Over there. So that's all. We just wanted to update you folks so there's no surprises. Nobody gets excited. And I do think in the long run, it's a wise decision unless we come up with something that doesn't economically make sense. So that's what that's for. Any other questions, concerns? The audit. Can you update us on the audit? I know it's in.
Yes, so not only is the audit in, but also the MDOT Act 51 report, or MTF, because they don't like Act 51 anymore, we're calling it MTF. So the MTF report is also in. Peter from the audit firm helped us get through everything. And in the total package of the audit, Heather put in a lot of hours to get that stuff pulled together and get everything done. But we are comfortable now. We're getting better at things, but we still need to talk more in the long range about what we're going to do for a financial person here. And so that's kind of like moving into the next type, but we have got everything submitted now and it made it before the extended deadline. So
That is, I did talk to Dean today, and right hand's not talking to the left hand down there when it comes to bond issuance. He seemed to think it would be okay, we'll get it figured out, but right now it's ineligible for the bonding. And but he didn't seem to think it was a huge deal. It was just like he said, I don't think they're
No, we
talking
just
to each
got,
other.
we got put in red flag status for
Yeah.
the state for funding for anything.
But Dean was very assured that.
Traditionally, if you meet your deadline, your extended deadline, you
Yeah.
become re-eligible, assuming that the outcome of the audit is what you want.
And that's what I meant by the right hand's not,
Yeah.
the two areas aren't talking to each other.
Well, it probably hasn't been satisfied yet either. They may have submitted everything, but until, they get checked off as satisfied, I mean, we're still in trouble. We're not eligible for anything. by
He
the
did
time.
look it up for me. He said things do look okay. There are a few issues, but not anything glaring.
Yeah, you usually have to redo some stuff. I
Yeah.
mean, that's, not abnormal.
So,
We've got a lot of years and not had any issues. So what's the status now then? So we're
Status,
holding
yeah.
until,
We're submitted.
we're submitted and it's in
That's,
and
so like, I'm just gonna say it, this is a really bad thing. Like, it's a really bad thing. Like, we all get that and understand that now, right? Like, it's a really bad thing what happened. And it put us in jeopardy of funding and eligibility for all kinds of stuff. And I just want to be really clear that, these things don't happen overnight. It's like your electric doesn't get shut off overnight. You have 3 months of notices telling you that. We just have got to communicate better, because I know, I speak for everybody on this board, that we would have done or hired or found a consultant or done anything we could do to make sure that this didn't happen. So, that goes back to a communications issue. On that. I don't think it necessarily is, we're not talking about a specific person or a skill set issue or any of that stuff. I think it was a bad communication issue. So, I was obviously extremely upset when I heard about it, because I would have been fired if I did this at my job. They wouldn't have even given me a chance to explain it. Like, I just would have been fired. So going into red flag status and ineligibility is a bad thing. So whatever we can do to never have that happen again. Like, that's facts, that's black and white. They don't care. Government doesn't care if you're understaffed or people were sick or you had COVID, they don't care. I mean, they'll give you, every excuse in the book on the other side, but it doesn't matter for us. So this is bad. This is primary of what we do, is bring in funding and be eligible to receive it. I mean, that's the flip side of it. So whatever we can do to make sure that communication is always there. I will certainly say for myself, I will help in any way. And so whatever we need to do to make up for this.
like I said, Dean indicated today that he thinks he'll be able to,
Yeah, but we
Get that
just shouldn't be in this
done.
situation.
and so we can move forward with things. We were just there asking for the bond, so.
Well, and I think to Lisa's point, for me, the biggest source of concern was that it seemed like we were the only component unit that missed the deadline. And I don't like that. I don't like the fact that of all the component units of the county, the road commission is the only one that had to seek an extension. So it's embarrassing as far as I'm concerned as a road commissioner that we were the only one of all the component units that couldn't get our audit done in time. It had to seek an
So
extension.
there was a rumor that there's one, but I've not been able to confirm if there was another.
But like, we don't sit on their board, we sit on this.
Yeah,
board.
and-
Yes,
yeah.
but we should not have been late.
Yeah.
We will discuss some of that in a future time.
So that's,
But that is going to lead us, unless you have questions on this side, into a proposal that we have gotten, but I want to talk vaguely because there may be other competing people who might want to do this. But we have discussed, Brad and I have discussed, should we bring in a consultant now and then hire a hedge hunter if we can't find anybody? Do we trying to get the feel of the board what they would like? I think we need somebody right away. So I would like to instruct Brad and staff to work with at least the one bid that we have, the one proposal we have, so that we actually have overseeing eyes on our finances.
how do we receive that one bid?
That bid came to us via the county. The county had a suggestion for us.
Oh, okay,
So
okay, I gotcha. We did not put out an RFP
We did not put
here.
an
Okay,
RFP, yeah.
okay.
The county did some research and it came us via the county. It came to us via the county, or if that makes sense. The county was involved. And I do think that in light of being late on the audit, having to hold people
Is
together.
this a short, is the bid that we received a very short-term solution?
It can be. But it gets somebody here now.
Yeah, first of all, I think based upon our policy, there is an exception to the bidding requirement for professional services, so this clearly would qualify for that. my concern is that I don't want, if this board approves bringing on a consultant, I don't somehow want that to all of a sudden slow down or kind of get into a, kind of a laid back phase, like the sense of urgency fades away from getting a full-time finance director here, because now we have engaged the services of consultants, so let's just now, kind of back off on the sense of urgency to hire someone. The other concern I have is that we have had this vacancy for a long time. And again, it goes back to the issue of communication here as to, we were, if there was that kind of problem if we needed to hire a headhunter because we were not having success on our own to get qualified candidates. I know that we thought we had a candidate, but that candidate didn't work out. If we were not getting the kind of quality of resumes that we needed to fill this position, then this should have been, again, being discussed during that phase when we were doing when the audit needed to be done, and hey, we need to start taking the steps. I agree with you, Mr. Chairman, that we do need to have someone in place because we need to start getting those detailed reports and everything else, and need to get the house in order from a finance standpoint. I want to be clear on the record here that in no way should that be considered as some sort of a longer term solution. I would even suggest that there be a time frame established with that proposal, that these services would be retained for no longer than a specified time period.
I would agree with that. I'm looking at it as a two-pronged issue. One is immediate, one is long-term. I think that Heather's done a great job, but Heather's not a CPA. She's not a.
We need to thank Heather.
And we need to thank Heather. for
Right,
everything she's
exactly,
done.
yeah.
Like, you got a
I mean,
lot of stuff dumped
What?
on you that was not your skill set, so thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Because
very
that's
much. We
really a tough
appreciate that.
position
It's
to be in.
Not any
No,
negative.
this is not about that.
No.
It has to do with the public fiduciary responsibility this board has. And I see a short-term issue where a consultant helps us with that. And then I see the long-term issue of filling the position. So what Hyder said is basically what I was thinking. We do a short-term, and then we either, if we put it back out again, we get no candidates, then we have to go to the next stage. It's a little bit more money because you're hiring somebody to find somebody.
Do we have a proposed contract from the vendor for this scope of I'm curious of the scope of services.
We do.
Okay.
I chose not to put it in the packet because it does have rates. And if we're
understand.
gonna put an RFP
No,
out,
I
if we
understand.
decide we want to do an RFP and put it out to everybody, then I didn't want to make that public.
So there's a couple different things, kind of services we could talk about. One concern I have is, the position's been vacant since October, give or take. I know that there's been, but relatively speaking, since October. So, a fresh set of eyes looking at it, and I'm not insinuating anything's wrong at all. I just mean somebody coming in, looking at it overall, kind of the state of where we're at. Here's our cash on hand. Here's where we are. Here's what's going on. And I understand an audit does that, but I'm talking about on a much different level than what, the audit requirements are. So somebody comes in and kind of evaluates everything. That's a good thing. Because if we hire somebody, they have just a regular adjustment period. And you can't hire them and then be like, oh, by the way, we haven't had a position for 10 months. So, good luck putting all that together. So there is a benefit to a contractor that's coming in with fresh eyes, looking at it and getting it ready for a finance director, a person to come in.
And
So
helping
I
Heather.
think, yeah, and helping Heather, because I think that would be really difficult for a person that doesn't have the idea or a grasp of this job to come in and kind of not have your stuff done for 10 months, right? So that's one thing where I lean towards the idea of a consultant to come in because, a set of fresh eyes is always good on books anyways. I mean, at all times, So that's one thing. As far as the headhunting component, that's a different thing. I mean, altogether, I would be curious to see the scope of the contract, the wording, the longevity of it, just to get an idea of if their expectations are the same as our expectations. And if they aren't, we too have an ability to bid that out as well, so.
All right. So much, so much. A lot of what Elisa said, I completely agree with, and when we're talking fresh eyes, that's actually not, it's one of the reasons why I like to change our audit personnel every couple of times. When Phil came in, I was here when Dean was doing it briefly, and then when Phil came in, the system changed. I mean, it was done differently anyway. The way our reports were done were certainly different. And I think Phil did a nice job, and I appreciated the work that he did. With the staff that we have, it's been adequate. I mean, and it's not a slight at all on Heather at all. But I think there needs to be a system that is reliable and maybe a little more consistent through the change of personnel. A consultant, if we could at least get a consultant to come in and at the very least, while we're looking for someone, assist in establishing a system that is, again, a little more consistent through personnel changes. I think that would be very helpful. Really, no more than 6 months. We should have a permanent person in place. And and frankly, if we have to pay somebody to do it, we have to pay somebody to do it. This is costing us a lot more by not being ready when we need to be ready. And there's all this big money stuff going on. I mean, it's just getting bigger. So, you know, it's really important, I think, that we get somebody who can maybe interject a little, you know, hey, have you tried this trick? I mean, however, have you tried this system? Have you done it this way? I'm not a CPA, so I really don't know all the, you know, the nuances of it, but I don't think it's a bad idea. I think we need to do something right now, and I would support anybody's, you know, a motion to.
Would the board be comfortable if we charge Brad with, I know that we can work with this particular vendor. It's open-ended, we could sit down and tailor it down to what we want. If we had Brad do that in the next 2 weeks and then brought a proposal
At our
to the regular meeting,
yeah.
would that be
And we could look at it.
satisfactory for everybody?
That'd be great.
Okay, is that,
Yeah.
that should be enough time.
Because I talked to Dave from the company, and, you know, they actually, Freeman does do a few other road commissions also. So they are set up with people that know what's going on. So they should be
An
able to,
understanding of it.
yeah, and the software and everything else.
And I do think that will help you. But somebody that has some other experience in that.
You know, talking about Raymond, they have different divisions within their umbrella of companies. And one of the divisions actually assists municipalities in searching.
They just kept
candidate
finding
recruitment.
loss.
Oh, I didn't know
Yeah,
that.
Raymond had our contract.
They have helped county and select county
So maybe we can wrap
administrators.
this into one.
Well, it's a completely different branch of government, but when you're charging Brad to have those discussions, it might be worthwhile to have that discussion with them.
Yeah.
And see if they can, and maybe we can have, you know, parallel kind of paths where they're assisting us with getting our financial house in order and making sure. But rather, and then at the same time, their prices are reasonable and their proposal is acceptable, then maybe we can engage them for the candidate search as well.
Because that will take a while.
That will take a while and they will obviously need to figure out what the job description of that position is and then obviously it takes a while to put it out there and vet candidates and solicit applications. So it's a process, and the sooner we start with that process, and you know, the better it is for us to meet our time frame of 6 months.
All right.
If that's.
So you don't want to advertise for
We advertised it once or twice.
not for the position,
Oh.
for the RFP. And then at the next meeting, I'd for sure like to see
Yeah.
the scope of the proposal, the total investment that
Right.
it's gonna be 6 months. what is the number that we're gonna authorize for 6 months?
And I don't know if there's any other group in town that does that. I really don't.
No,
So-
there-
Well, the group that would be doing this is out of Flint. Their municipal
Yeah.
group is out of
So-
Flint.
So, but being kind of a single source, what'd you call that? I can't remember.
Professional service.
Professional
Professional
services.
services.
I didn't want to put their prices out there and then what you guys wanted to do. So if we can have a proposal in 2 weeks for short-term somebody here to help and then ask them about the head hunting at the same time.
Okay.
Kind of wrap it together, that would be great. So is there any other, is everybody comfortable with that?
I'm trying to think, I think we executed our contract with them in a board meeting in May, which was the last Friday of May. And our candidate was hired 2 weeks ago. So that would have been end of July. So it was an 8-week process nationwide for our executive.
Yeah.
So it went relatively quickly.
Yeah, except that we may have to jump to a couple of additional hoops in terms of, depending on the number of applicants, we may have to vet them and then select a narrow group and create a subcommittee to review the applications because we have to be.
Right, that's what we did. We did have a
Yeah,
subcommittee.
right.
I was on that.
Yeah.
Do we have a dollar amount in mind? Like, do we believe that the salary that's been posted is adequate, or do we think that that's part
But
of
I
our
think
issue?
that's probably where
Yeah.
maybe they're.
So I think that that's,
help
like,
us with the-
Important.
Yeah.
Maybe we're not, I don't know,
No, I honestly don't.
Yeah, I think-
attracting the right
Yeah.
person with the right salary. So I don't know. I don't know the right words, but that might make a really big difference. So maybe engaging, if it's not the consultant for finance, whomever you guys are interested in, but some kind of advice on that, on a more attractive way to get somebody,
So we'll have a two-pronged proposal on the 27th? No. Fourth, on 24th, for the financial part of the issue. So if there's no further questions, we'll move on to the bridge.
Yeah. So, in our last meeting, we were talking about the bonding stuff and the words, well, that's just for the down payment, or that's just for the
20% match.
the 20% match, at $60 million or whatever the idea to bond was. I find that ludicrous. I think that's insane. And I think that we've been misserved by the people who've been basically dragging us along with their highly priced consulting services. OHM is respected in its field and whatnot, but I will say this, if they couldn't have spitballed a $300 million price tag early on, based on the environmental concerns that they expected, if they could have done that, we would have saved $5 million in estimates, because that's essentially what we're going through. We spent roughly $5 million or maybe even more. I mean, we spent as much on the OHM services and these charrettes and all the time that we've done. We spent as much on that as we spent on that bridge, to build that bridge over on Cass. That's crazy. And speaking of that cost, you know what? Let's just build the bridge where we expect it to be. Let's build the bridge. Let's get the property. Okay. Let's build the bridge where it needs to be, and then we'll build a road to it. Let's get it done. And I'll tell you what, as far as, I really kind of stuck to the marking up only 2 acres or less than 2 acres thing, you know what? Heck with it anymore, because if that's what it takes to get if only marking up is what it takes to get the federal money from it, to heck with the federal money and the federal puppet masters. Let's do it. We have a wetlands bank. Use our wetlands bank. Pave straight across, get the bridge done, and we'll worry about the other end when it's all said and done. And I'll bet you we could build the bridge. We'll say 10 million now. if it was 7 million before, I think it was seven, actually closer to 7 million for that bridge when it's all said and done.
I think it was 10.
Was it 10? Okay,
The
so
Army Corps
let's say-
dollars were 7,
let's say
and then we put in
15
3.
million, because it's gonna be about the same same type of span,
I would assume.
okay? So we'll say 15 million, and then what does it take to build the road? I mean, honestly, I think we could get the whole thing done in about $50 million. It'd be less than a mill for 10 years, and it'd be done. It'd be done.
I was confused too, like the difference, if we're talking about the height of this proposed bridge versus the height of the current Cass Road Bridge, I guess for lack of a better term, Robbins Bridge. I don't understand the difference. I understand that, but I don't understand why.
Because with the pillars, with the type of construction, it'd have to be the supports, the support struts.
Fewer pillars.
The pillars.
Yeah.
They take very little space.
Because of wetlands, so that's the environmental.
Yeah.
It's the environmental aspect.
So there's a different environmental concern in the Cass Road area than there is in the Hartman Road area?
Well, but that road is already done. What we're talking about is a longer span.
Correct, yeah, that's
And-
true.
And it's being elevated over the valley. Whereas if I had my druthers, I'd say we run bulldozers through, we throw, we build a road base, we build our bridge, and we build a road base on the other side, and we connect to Hartman. Then we
So
take.
Cass Road had a road base because the existing dam was there, right? Okay, I mean, I'm just trying to it's been a couple years since I've been involved in this project, so I'm trying to remember. So the span had to do with
Moving the bridge.
the sensitivity
Mhm.
of underneath the bridge
Correct.
and the type of piling or whatever you want to
Correct.
call it, that you have to put it on.
It's the most environmentally friendly option.
So, but that money that this number that appeared out of nowhere had to do with property acquisition, all of the project, not just the bridge, right?
Is it safe
All
to
of
say
the
it was
project.
maximum?
That was kind of like the max.
Right, no, I
Okay.
agree, yeah.
So that was not because we looked at different types of bridges and to really be truly the least impactful, it was a $450 million
That
bridge.
is- Yeah, I do
We
remember
could
that,
not
yeah.
even start thinking about it. So the bridge portion of this project is 151 million with a total current estimate of 227.
Right.
And that's all land acquisition, all road construction, the intersection here, the intersection at Cass, and the intersection on
So
30.
the real number is about 227 million
Yes,
But
with
when-
the tall bridge.
With that whole
with the tall bridge. But you have to like throw out all this extra numbers because you are giving worst case scenarios on seeking funding.
If I
Right?
understand correctly, you have to give them a number, but you
Yes.
better not be.
You don't want to be under.
You don't want to be
Because
under,
if they suspect that you've undershot it,
Mhm.
To get it through.
to get it through, they're gonna look for every single thing you skip, every detail you
Right.
skip for the environmental protection. You go high, then you start negotiating down. Right now, with all of the different engineering, we've knocked it down without changing the environmental footprint drastically down to 227 million with a $150 million bridge.
So
The
whoever
original-
FOIA'd it did us a disservice because it was an extremely out of context FOIA that I suspect they knew.
Yes, it was.
And then it goes out publicly with no context or discussion or communication.
And when I spoke to the Record Eagle, I told them, I said, this is something that we had to put out with the absolute worst case scenario. It's going to be less, but we don't know how much less exactly because we don't know when it's going to be built and there's some inflation to it too. So this, when we originally were talking about it, when we had that almost $100 million or $100 million bridge, that was for the bridge, which is now 151 million.
Right.
Now, number one, I see where you want to go. You'll never get permitted for it.
Right.
They will never issue a permit to build that.
Yeah.
Because if you don't meet the environmental regulations, they're just not going to permit.
See, I disagree with that. And you've said that to us before, and other people have said that to us before. But honestly, we have a need. I mean, honestly, we have a desperate need for an additional crossing. Okay? And what is slowing us down right now is just an ungodly amount of government red tape and bureaucracy and jumping through hoops when we know what we're going to get when we're done. We know what we're gonna get. They know what we're gonna get, but we gotta do the dance. I'm tired of doing the dance. We've done the dance for the 7 years that I've been here. We've been doing that dance. And then we say, we got another 8 years. Okay, well, then I'm gonna be gone. And then who's gonna be fighting for it at that time?
But the environment, I agree with you, that your frustration with the regulations, but the regulations are there, so I don't
Are
understand
they?
how you can.
Well, there is a reason we have a wetlands bank.
But do we have enough in that wetlands bank?
No,
to
you
offset?
can't, you cannot
Right.
use more than an acre on
Exactly.
any one given project.
If it was
So
that
we still
simple.
have to do some restoration
Right.
out there
So,
in the
so
area we're
let's-
gonna disturb.
So let's then hire a full-time engineer instead of paying hundreds of thousands of dollars to OHM for another set of studies that are going nowhere. Get a full-time engineer and have them design something that's minimally invasive and give us a real price and what it take to build it without federal money, without federal stipulation.
But this is the minimally invasive plan, right? Isn't it this the minimally?
This is the most
invasive?
minimally invasive
Right,
plan,
right.
certainly,
Yeah.
but you know what, if it doesn't have to be this tall, let's see what then qualifies. But we have an engineer maybe who works full-time on it, it's a hell of a lot cheaper than another $1 million here and there to OHM. If we have to hire an engineer that makes more than you, Brad, we'll hire an engineer that makes more than you to
I'm
do
not,
that.
that's the least of
full-time.
my worries.
But
But the
I'm
problem
not
is-
trying to get on you,
No,
I'm just.
no, it's, the problem is you're not gonna find somebody out there.
You say that, you know, I mean, until we ask, until we put word out that we're looking for somebody. There are bridge builders out there. They know the rules. There are people who get it done all over the country. Let's hire one of them.
I don't think we can environmentally get that. That is the cheapest one.
That is, yeah, that's what I
That is
understood
absolutely
it to
cheapest way to
me,
do it.
that was the most.
But you're gonna
minimally
cut the
invasive.
Boardman Valley in half. You wanna see them come out of the woodwork?
And we have to have a connection,
Let's-
because if you're gonna. direct
Let's have a plan.
semis,
Let's have a plan. Let's put it before the public, and then if they don't want it, we're done. We're just done. And you know what? And then they can live for the next 100 years without the additional crossing, and they can have an at-risk corridor at South Airport. And you know, then we're done. We've done our part. We've done our part. Okay, but I'm gonna tell you, I mean, we fought the DNR and the Enviro wackos on the deer thing, for God's sakes, which is an absolute moronic thing. I mean, those people, they shouldn't even be in government. They should have been fired, the people who created the problem in the first place. And I'll tell you what, when this area grows as fast as it's growing, if we don't have an answer to that growth in terms of transportation, we're doing a disservice. We have to try a little harder. And there are people out there in this country right now who do build bridges, and they know how to work around those environmental restrictions.
So here's the thing. For about what, since 1980,
Okay.
right? For all this project, people are complaining about the cost of this project. The reason the cost of the project is where it is now is because of decades of delay. That need was there in 1980 when you first started talking about it. That need was there in 1990s, in 2000s, now we're in 2023. And guess what? When you delay the project for 40 to 50 years, it goes up to $300 million or $270 million. The need keeps growing. The amount of work that needs to be done to build the bridge keeps going up. And then these people for the longest time who were opposed to that, were opposed to it based upon environmental concerns. We addressed those environmental
Now
concerns.
it's too much.
Now
money.
it's too much money. And guess what? The entity that FOIA'd
That's right.
thing was the entity called Groundworks for
Yeah.
Resilient Communities. And guess what? They are a member of the technical committee of the newly created MPO. And so when we talk about collaboration and regional planning, we now have entities that are going to be part of this MPO who are going to be working across purposes with the most important, most significant project that this commission is tackling in the last 50 years. But this is what happens. They raised objections to it for decades on environmental reasons. We address those environmental concerns.
Now it's too much money.
Now it's too much money. They will always oppose this project because they have an agenda that is at odds with what the purpose of this work commission.
How are they involved with the MPO? What is their legal basis?
They apparently, and Fred maybe can answer it, someone else can. It has to have like Tart Trail is part of it. They are not part of the policy board. So I want to be clear. They are not voting members, that they are part of the technical committee, because apparently by statute, the MPO has to address all transportation needs, not just vehicular. So where Groundworks for Resilient Communities. Where I think Tart Trail, I don't know what their role is. I don't know where in the transportation planning process.
They used to be called something else. What did they used to be called? You know what I'm talking about? And they were the group that stopped it on round 1 and 2. And they
So
had
the
this
group that stopped it was Mimi, right?
well,
That's one
in
of the
partnership with what became Groundworks or something.
Yeah, Groundworks does a lot of different things, like, you know, the Feed the Kids project.
You're right.
I don't
You're right.
understand where they fit in the transportation,
Yeah, I
maybe
don't
there
know.
is a but that is why we are at this point. That is why we are being attacked, because now we jump through all the hoops and we address all the environmental concerns. Now it's the cost. And guess what? It has to be in that way built. I don't know about the height. I agree with you and Elise on the height. I think the way it was addressed was the height was necessary because of the minimum number of pillars to make it the most minimally invasive environmental.
I think it's the bank height. They were gonna match the road.
Yeah.
The bank.
But the rest of it,
Yeah.
where the bridge is coming out, where all those intersections, it has to be built that way, because if it is built the way we expect it to be built, it's going to be handling a lot of the semi-traffic. It's going to be handling, like, it's going to reduce traffic back to 40% of South Airport Road. We can't have it going in front of Live Arbors the way it is,
Right.
just by building a connecting road.
Can I ask a question? Brad, we have OHM. And I know they're tasked with the bridge.
No, they're tasked, technically they're tasked with NEPA, because you have to go through NEPA, the National Environmental Protection.
How do we get a spitball for something that Jason would like to say?
They won't even offer one, because they said
Is
it's
there
not.
anybody that we can ask to do that?
I don't know. I've talked to HNTV. I have a friend in HNTV who's in their bridge, and he said nobody's gonna even give you an idea because it's not buildable. Because if you drop it that far, you're gonna have so much down there that you're gonna have to, with all that banking, you're gonna back up that whole area for the river, so that if you ever did have a massive rain event and a flooding, you would be talking about basically impounding the river.
I don't
To
think
a
that's what
point.
we're talking about, though. We're talking about a bridge that kind of goes like this from bank to bank. And there's a couple pillars in here. So it's kind of level.
Because lowering it would mean more
So
pillars.
if we make
that-
these banks and we have a gradual grade to the center and a gradual grade back up, and maybe we cut these banks a little bit, there are possibilities. We do, if we're gonna entertain something else, for the purposes of tonight's meeting, I went back and read the last 3 years of our minutes. And I can tell you that we've spent a lot of money with OHM, to your point. I thought you were gonna propose OHM to do our financials, because that's who we. Just call
Yeah, their
it,
expertise.
they were
They
rated
have a
number
really
one,
good
just call it
idea.
OHM.
Big part of the budget.
So they consistently do not meet the deadlines. So when he gave us, when Bill gave us the deadline, said, yeah, next month I'll have that final report. It wasn't next month, it was 4 months. And they do always blame it on somebody else, and I don't know if that's true or not.
They don't give us a discount, though.
But I know every month we pay them to drive up here and give us a little howdy-do. And it's very expensive, and maybe it's as fast as this task could go. But maybe we ought to throw a curve to try to let them continue, because we're so far along into it.
Yeah.
And see if there's somebody else. Just try, call Bechtel or somebody in California that really does really big stuff. And talk to somebody on the phone for $500 an hour, 700 or 1100, whatever they charge, and see if they'll say, you know, there's no chance of you doing it any other way, or there's a couple possibilities.
We gotta ask. I would just, we're doing a
The scope
disservice.
is really important to talk about, because I mean, all of us call it the bridge, which it is, but it's really not just about the bridge. Like Hyder said, it's about an entire corridor of moving people. And, you know, when I first found out about the bridge project, well, not just knowing about it living in town, but I mean, really looked at the bridge project, was when I was trying to stop the dam removal in the Boardman Valley. So I got really involved in this project. And it was explained to me, well, Lisa, the project already happened. And I was like, what? Like, I don't understand. And then they said, have you ever turned onto 3 Mile Road from US 31 North at the place with the big bear statue, the t-shirt shop? And I'm like, yeah. They're like, do you wonder why the road's 5 lanes there? It used to be 2 lanes. Remember over the Little Mitchell Creek Bridge? And I was like, yeah, it is. It's massive. And then you take that massive 4 lanes up past the runway. And you
5 lanes. with-
5 lanes, yeah. And you turn on to Hammond Road. And I was like, oh, yeah, you know, by a certain general store that I know. And then you turn right onto Hammond and it is enormous. There was like Mitchell Creek Golf Course and maybe like Royce. There really wasn't that much, let's be honest. Now there's like a funeral home and stuff, but there really wasn't that much. And I was like, oh my God. Then you drive down here, right in front of the road commission. And it's still like Grand Central Station. It's like one of the biggest roads in our county, if not the widest road in our county, right? And then you get up here to what is like the most fancy railroad bridge crossing in the state of Michigan. And I was like, why on earth do we have like something in the Blue Ridge Parkway here? And then there's that lovely family that owns that home down here and they have like the bridge to nowhere that just goes up and ends, which they put a harvest decoration up and Halloween and Christmas Santa's there. That's the Hartman-Hammond Bridge. That's the Hartman-Hammond Bridge. The Hartman-Hammond Bridge wasn't a bridge. It was an entire bypass, 5 lanes to get traffic off of Grandview Parkway. Who wants all of these semi trucks on Grandview Parkway? One would think the city commission wouldn't, but we get fought tooth and nail on that, right? And then I heard what stopped it. Our friends in Lansing, you're probably aware of what happened. That stopped this project dead in its tracks. We already have more than half of this project done. We need the river crossing and this weird, whatever you want to call Hartman Road. I don't even know what to call it because Hartman Road's kind of weird. But this is what we do know. It's 2 lanes. Arbors of Traverse is not going to have 2 lanes worth of, and clearly there's like a big hill where the IRS is, right? Like we somehow, and then there's like a buffalo farm with wetlands. Right? So like, we know we have some things to do, but this project has been going on for years and the naysayers are like, it's going to expand, it's going to do this, it's going to do that. It's literally been here 60% completed for what, 10 years at least since they did that, if not more. And we are all just doing fine. We just need to finish it because right now it's like a Dukes of Hazzard launch over the river that just stops.
Why couldn't we build Hartman out?
What do you mean? I'm sorry.
Why now?
Let's start buying the right away.
Widen Hartman right out.
MPO has capacity building
We could,
Without the bridge.
Arbors of Traverse.
I know, but that's, it's never.
And quite bluntly,
There's an approach.
when are we gonna run one between Oak Road and Rennie Hill? Let's put the next bridge in.
I mean, we could talk about traffic
not far off.
Let's
capacity.
put the next bridge in. Let's talk
because
about
you're gonna
three
need
bridges.
it.
So these dollars we're talking about are the whole thing, like finishing
Yeah,
all of it.
yeah, all of
To
it.
get it over
But if we
31.
really want to just talk about a bridge, we could look at traffic capacity building now, just like you're saying. That MPO, we're not bringing the bridge to the MPO, we're bringing traffic capacity
Yeah.
changing. And you know, if you guys ever drive on Hartman, I mean, it wouldn't hurt
Oh,
now, even
yeah.
without the bridge, that would be a helpful thing. I also
would.
would make the argument that feeding off of the new Cass Road Bridge to have an extended lanes on Cass into Hartman also is helpful in a bypass type manner. But the reality of this project is it's been here. It's been helping us in bringing people up to the launch, if you would just keep driving over the river in your car. But it would do it. So this number that all of a sudden is so, oh my God, you know, why, you know, we FOIA'd it and it's crazy. But we're talking about an entire capacity building project. We could in fact just build a bridge to what Jason's saying. We could in fact do the capacity building in a separate scope. We aren't married to that. So that is a possibility, but we're clearly gonna have to think out of the box. But to Hyder's point, it's like a bad marriage. We could, lose 50 pounds and, start making dinner every night and he would find a reason why still not a good enough wife. We're never gonna make groundwork happy, right? We're never. We're never. If she just loses 50 pounds, she'll be the perfect wife. You lose 50 pounds and then there's something else. Not that I've been divorced. I haven't.
Wow.
Okay, somebody had to bring this girl to divorce. No, this is how women think, Hyder, and just trust me on this. But my point is we're never gonna be a good spouse to them. It doesn't matter what we do.
And again, why don't we just begin to do, I mean,
Exactly my point.
eventually, without doing anything, there will be the right
Right.
spring with the right snowpack and the right rain, and South Airport will be gone.
Right, yeah, exactly.
That
It's
that is not far off.
So if these people don't want the bridge, eventually South Airport will be gone.
And let me.
They won't be able to live in
But
Times Square.
And they will not be able to live in
if we
town.
rebuilt South
And
Airport
then-
Road, like you guys had talked about, this bridge, you guys had been talking about that. What kind of height are we envisioning there? Right now, it's a culvert bridge that dips down and clearly businesses have access off of it, right? But if we were to rebuild a bridge, it would have to pass NEPA. It would, right? We have all of these new components that we didn't have. So are we talking about a span bridge over South Airport
Well,
Road?
the walk bridge isn't that high.
So my understanding of NEPA is that is for federal funding.
No,
No,
No.
The federal government has absolutely zero business in our environmental affairs unless it's,
they regulate the state regulatory agency. So NEPA is for everything. It's for every housing project. It's for
and the reason that's happened is because we've allowed the camel's nose under the tent. We take their money and that's why it's happened. And this is my point about taking more federal money.
But I think they said that it's not because we are taking federal money, it's a requirement.
to get environmental permits.
Yeah, to get permits. It has nothing
Eagle
to
will
do with
never
federal
issue an
funds, right?
environmental. permit.
Because we take their money.
Okay, at the
Either
state
by
level,
state-
maybe.
Yeah, the
Right.
state is
Yeah,
owned
state
by
can,
them.
yeah.
Yeah, the state is owned by them.
Yeah.
So if we're talking about, and the reason I'm bringing it up is if we're having these really 30,000 foot discussions on bridges and spans and what kind of heights are required and what's best practice for environmental security. Well, we're gonna be replacing that South Airport Bridge sooner rather than later. We all know that. We all know it. So what is acceptable there? Is it different because of the banks and the height? Is it different because there's businesses already built, literally?
The banks and the heights have already been bulldozed in.
Exactly.
So you put a box culvert in there.
No.
I don't think they'll allow us to do that anymore.
Yeah, we would not be able to rebuild it as it is now.
So my point
Those
is the
culverts
bare
have to
minimum.
come out.
So those
Right.
businesses have to come out because there's
the
no way to
culverts
release.
have to come out and the road get filled back in the way they were originally. And then the delta area that goes around, was it Medley Park?
Yeah, Medallion Park.
Valley Park, that will be the normal path of the river and the
We're
bridge.
rerouting the river.
The bridge will go from the top of the intersection all the way down to where the entrances are into the park and those.
What if we don't want it to?
NEPA says so.
You're not allowed to put in culverts like that.
You can't. So that's why if we're talking about this and
Wait a
we're
minute,
starting from
we're gonna put in
scratch,
a box.
why wouldn't we talk
Wait a
about?
minute, we're gonna put in a box culvert at Keystone Road.
There's an existing box culvert at
No,
Keystone.
there's a tube, and we're gonna put in a concrete box culvert. Why is that any different than a concrete box culvert at South Airport
Because it's
Road?
already filled there, isn't it?
South Airport Road's already filled.
I have no idea.
Yeah.
This is,
We're getting
I think we're
misinformation.
getting-
We're talking about river crossing.
Right.
Yeah.
We're talking
No,
about-
he's right.
It's
This is the
same
right
river.
conversation to
It's the
have.
same river.
We're getting
Yeah.
misinformation.
At Keystone as it is at South Airport. It's the same river it is at Hartman Hammond.
So Jason, where I'm going with this is, let's just say we want to have the conversation that you were talking about. Maybe there's more, maybe we could do more, less invasive, but maybe not as much as the huge bridge, right? So when they tell us, okay, this is what you guys can do at Hartman and Amity, this is it, or you're not going to pass NEPA. I would like to bring up South Airport Road, which we know we're gonna be redoing and need to be forward thinking and
Oh,
talk about, right?
Get some
So
answers on that.
what's good for that is good for that, right? Same river. So we could have this discussion and find out what is an accepted amount of minimally invasive.
And that's it's an interesting conversation to have, and particularly in light of the money we spent to have the corridor study in the first place, okay? None of you were here when they did that first corridor study, and they went down South Airport Road, and what did they proposed boulevards and roundabouts, but they never talked about what the real crux of the issue was on South Airport
It's
Road.
Logan Valley. That's the
It's Logan
problem.
Valley.
Yeah.
Okay, and so I'm telling you, we've been misserved. I'm not particularly happy with the people who've been providing us information, and frankly, I think we're getting disinformation. And I think sometimes we get a little too lazy and we just say, oh, I guess that's just the way it is. And so we feel, I'm feeling railroaded into things that I don't really think make sense to us.
Let's set up a working,
Yeah.
let's have a work
Let's go.
study session about this soon.
I would
Yes.
love to learn
A week,
more about
a week,
heights on
2
roads.
weeks, 4 weeks. And don't we already have a permit for the, because we have our application in for the money for the Keystone Crossing?
I don't know if we've got that all squared away on permits or not. I'll have to check on that.
Please check on that, because then we will say, okay, that's
That's a really good point.
So let's-
Same river.
Let's,
River,
we'll do it, if we do a study session, because we're gonna get preliminary corridors, right? On the 24th?
We're hoping, we're
So
working.
we'll have preliminary corridors on 24th. So if we do it after the 24th, maybe we'll set it up on the 24th. So then we can have preliminary corridors and then we can talk about crossings, because I'm willing to talk about the next bridge. I'm willing to talk about Hope.
I think we need to talk about South Airport in the same
So,
breath as
And
it,
South Airport.
especially if they're gonna say, oh, no, you can't do that there, but then like a mile and a half you can away. So I would like to learn why. And another thing I think is really important is a project that I was part of a few years ago, which was the limited access mobility resolution between East Bay Township and Garfield. And it was in response to our bad spouses at Groundworks. And basically what it says is, we know that growth is coming this way. They said, well, if you build it, they will come. But my point is, 10 years ago, we built this widened road and we're not overrun. But what Garfield and East Bay did was they got together and said, any businesses that come in on this corridor have to use limited access mobility roads. So I'm from Florida, so, basically there's no curb cuts on the boulevards. And so what that does is all of the things that they had said about us and what we were doing at Hammond Road, well, clearly haven't come true because we're looking at them. But we have a lot of business parks. We're sitting in one. And this was the idea on the Hammond corridor. We've already had forward thinking on planning for curb cuts in this corridor. So, and we have 10 years of proof that building it didn't create South Airport Road 2.0, and it never will, because my God, how many driveways are there on that road? We'll never have that. We're gonna have these limited access mobility. The resolution stands, I wanna say it was like 2015, maybe 2014, in place that both townships had passed that. And that's the thing we need to keep up. It's about the communications on this. The road's already been built, people. The bypass goes all the way to the launch site. Like, it's there, it's been happening. We haven't had all those negative things happen that we told, or that we were told were going to happen. But I'd like to talk about limited access mobility corridors because they're critical to that argument of the density and that argument of the urban sprawl. So I think that that's a really important component of it. And then, of course, the engineering, which I have no skill set in talking about heights and things like that. If it's okay in one part of the river, why not another? And why would this be best practice? And that would be a great thing to learn about.
So let's bring some dates on the 24th and we'll set up a capacity study session.
Mhm.
We'll just call it a capacity study session.
Are you talking about OHM at it? Like, what are you envisioning, like
Us.
Alan, when you were?
I would envision us talking about this.
Okay.
Something that's, it wasn't on the agenda tonight. We certainly have a lot of strong feelings about it. I think our community has really strong feelings about it. And very soon, I think we should let them weigh in, not the few squeakers.
Right.
But the people who have to pay for it. And if they
Well,
don't want
Money
to,
talks.
and if they don't want to pay for it, then we'll understand and we'll move on.
I think the study session may be more productive too, but based on all the discussion that's been had, to have OHM there, because if the purpose of the study session is to like, why can't we do this in this part but not half mile away? Well, who's gonna answer that question? OHM. We're not gonna answer that amongst ourselves.
Supposed to be, yeah.
There's Bill here, Bill will be here on 24th, so it'll be a good time to do that discussion.
Yeah, maybe we can ask, but that meeting, if that discussion can last a while,
That's why we'll do a study session.
yeah,
He'll be
let's
here
just
so we
do
can
a study
figure out-
session. But I
Bring
think
some
it
dates
makes
and
sense to have him here
Yep.
because all these questions have to be answered and we're not engineers.
We have to do it. 'cause,
And this FOIA told us we're not in control of that timeline. Like now is the time to have the conversations and get the communications out. Otherwise, a narrative of this largest scope, worst case scenario number stays in the headline.
And you know what, if it fits the community, maybe that's not bad. If it costs
Right.
300 million to move traffic across this town, and it's a big growing community, if it's, maybe that's what it is. I'm not even afraid of that.
Yeah.
The difference between 227 million, 300 million, I mean, this is a monstrous commitment.
Well, my
If you're-
question is, what's the alternative? So
Yeah.
let's just say this crossing doesn't get built.
Yeah.
How much can we expense out Airport Road? I mean, the idea that the traffic, if you don't build it, they won't come. Traffic has we have not built anything new in the last 10 years that I can think of.
No.
So, but the traffic keeps increasing,
Well,
the
wait a minute,
population keeps
We helped
increasing.
South Airport Road a little bit, just. pick
Yeah.
up the bus.
So what's the solution?
That was a really good
So,
move.
all right, to handle the capacity that would be needed on South Airport, you have two choices. You either do 4 lanes with the boulevard that's wider than the center turn lane, which means you've got to flip a coin, take out the north side, take out the south side.
bottleneck at the hill.
Yeah, exactly.
So-
And the businesses that are there.
Or you
They're
have to
up
build,
the curb too.
right, or you have to build, if you don't boulevard it, you need 7 lanes.
It's
Which,
ridiculous.
none of which are practical and
Why does the
realistic.
boulevard matter?
What did they just do the stuff in St.
Because
Petersburg though?
It only,
They
you
just
can only
built the
turn
new-
right, so you don't have left turn.
Oh,
you don't
okay.
depend when you-
Find those
Okay.
buildings.
They elevated
Awesome.
the crosstown traffic in St. Petersburg, Florida. And there's 4 or 6
Flowers.
lanes elevated.
Yeah.
And the local lanes are all on the side with all kinds of crossings like our concrete box.
But then you'll have
culvert.
pillars all around the center of South Airport Road with that flyover,
I'll put it to you this way.
right?
If you're having your heart attack at Cherry Knoll, a $300 million bridge looks pretty good.
Okay, all right.
So,
all right.
we're gonna set
Yeah.
the meeting
On the
for these
24th.
discussions on the 24th.
Yes, so bring some dates.
I appreciate the discussion.
No, I forgot. I apologize.
That's all
I said I
right.
wouldn't. I forgot.
This is what the questions we have are the same questions
Yeah.
that people have that are reading kind of some misinformation or out of context articles. So the more that we can just talk about it, I think the better off we are. And then when the time comes, if they choose to support it, then they do, and if they don't, they don't.
I love, you have the Record Eagle, puts out an article, a couple of quotes from me, and then you have the next day, the Ticker article, which almost contradicts what I was saying, and you just go, we just need to get this thing settled. None of that really is what I was saying. My major problem is, I don't have a problem with bonding. Or excuse me, I don't have a problem with a millage, going to the people and asking, because I really think that is the ultimate place where.
Yeah, they say yes,
where-
yes.
Yes,
That's
okay,
right.
but I have a real problem with asking for that kind of money, and then it's really only a down payment. That struck me as like, this is absolutely crazy. We've known that it was an under $100 million project for so many years. And that's what we've known, because that's what we've always talked about. It was 60, 90, maybe 100 million tops. And now,
When we came out, the bridge was 110 million from the last study. When we came out of that study.
When was that study?
yeah,
The one that ended just before this
The Pell.
phase, the focus Pell.
see, I don't remember 110 million. I still remember being, I just,
Which is
so
around 40 million more.
so maybe I'm not paying attention enough. I don't know. I'm getting frustrated by lack of information, and it's just, that's just so much, even, yes, if you have a heart attack at your, I get it, okay, I get it.
Unless somebody's gonna build. a house.
But the reality is when people are looking at, oh,
And that's what will happen.
we're gonna pay a millage, we're gonna pay a 1 mil for 10 years, and it's gonna raise $50 or $60 million, and that's gonna be our 20% of the construction cost. And they're gonna go, and then it costs more. And there are gonna be a lot of people who just have a problem with that, the same as I have a problem with that. And we may not get that as a result of that. You know, I think we need to look at all options, and frankly, if we have to, we need to find a friendly environmental attorney.
Well, if the,
Okay? I mean, somebody who's known the system long enough to know what can and cannot be done. And I'll tell you what, OHM, as far as I'm concerned, they could come and they could join us at our meeting and everything. But I don't want to suggest that this is the case, but there could be a certain degree of CYA too,
I don't know.
you know?
I don't know enough about the facts to
Yeah, I
even
don't
be
know
able to
enough.
speculate.
I've been around long enough to know that a lot of this stuff should have been known earlier, okay? Spitballing it or whatever. I mean, they could have just, you know, worst case scenario. Give us a worst case scenario.
My point from the last meeting was, when we were talking about the millage, was if we're going to go to the county residents for a millage, we have to have a well-coordinated and a well-formed plan to educate the public. Because this FOIA request and what came out of it, the articles, this is the beginning of a coordinated misinformation.
oh, yeah.
Yes, it is.
And we have to be able to counter that.
And it worked twice.
Right, and it has to be done based upon all, like you said, all of the information, this work session, all of the answers answered, so that when we go to the public, if we do that, we have all the answers. We explored this option, we explored all these options. This is the best option. This is the best cost that for this project can be done. So I think it's a good project. It's a good exercise to have so that we can count in order to address all this misinformation that's been put out into the public.
I read hundreds of comments.
Yeah.
And almost all of them said, we should have done this 10 years ago.
Oh,
We
yeah.
should have done this 20
Yeah,
years ago. Why
exactly.
didn't we do it 30
Yeah.
years ago? Well, I can answer why. A coordinated misinformation effort that stopped it twice. All you have to do is drive down the road from here and you can see the ramp that ends. That was ended at last minute. They were that far into the construction by a misinformation campaign out of Lansing. It will happen again if we don't learn how to communicate better and let people make informed decisions. And not a special interest group telling them what to think or us telling them what to think, just providing good information, the same information we make decisions on. And I agree with Jason. I don't think we have enough good information to make good decisions.
I do.
Well,
And I also want to add South Airport Road Bridge to our plans,
Oh,
because
it
we should be
is.
talking
It's
about
in
it
the back.
now.
It should happen. I know that FEMA has been on the county to fix South Airport, haven't it? I'm looking at the chairman. It's my understanding.
Greg Bird
It's on
has
there.
some
Oh, the new maps.
information on it, yeah. I served on the LPT, the LEPC almost 10 years ago, and our number one scenario we practiced was the South Airport Road culverts going out. How would our emergency services work
Right.
and that sort of thing. That was 10 years ago, and Greg talked about that. Greg would have great information on,
Mary was talking about that back when she was the manager, way back.
I was pre-Mary, or
Yeah.
post-Mary, but post-Mary.
Yeah.
But so that's just, I think, good planning if we're talking about that. And if we're learning about spans and environmental things and all that stuff for bridges, it should then logically apply to 1.5 miles down the road or down the river.
Without the bridge, without bridges across the Boardman Valley, and it's not too far off, there will eventually become dual things. McLaren or somebody will come on this side, build a gigantic hospital to compete with this hospital, because it'll be on that side of the river.
Ask a paramedic, just ask a paramedic how the Hartman-Hammond Bridge would help them.
That's what I mean.
All right.
Anyway, we should probably move on to our next
Yeah,
issue.
sorry.
But we will set one up on the 24th, of which I'm gonna ask, can we start at 7 on the 24th?
Oh, yeah, you've got it then.
I have to come from Mount Pleasant that day, so it'll be really
You want
tough.
to change our meeting?
Just the one time, 7.
Okay.
That down right now, because I'll screw it up.
The next issue is personnel evaluation, and Brad has requested we go into closed session to do this.
So we
So
need a motion.
I will make a motion to go into closed session for the purposes of discussing a periodic evaluation of our managing director pursuant to section 8A of the Open Meetings Act.
Is this?
I'll support it. No, we don't have. to.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so we will step out.
closed session. Support.
Was Alan support?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Yeah,
Public comment.
They're all asleep.
No problem.
Everybody went home.
You might make, just, there's no action as a result of the closed session. I mean, just, so that's a matter of minutes, right?
Yeah, there's no need to make
No,
a change.
okay.
I think, yeah, we're not, we're just out of those.
Any managers comment? Any commissioners comments?
Motion to adjourn.
Adjourn.